I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Being an adult kind of sucks. Things just aren't as enjoyable as they were when you were a kid. The constant grind of going to work every day, it kind of crushes your soul, crushes your will to live.
And I'm not an old man by any means. I'm a 22-year-old healthy young boy, okay? But sometimes when I'm sitting there at work, I think back to the good old days of growing up in the early aughts.
Back when life was simple. As a kid, there's not a care in the world other than going to school and making sure your KD is over 1.5 in Modern Warfare 2.
When I think of gaming back then, there's one game in particular that just oozes early 2000s energy. The fashion, the music, it did everything that GTA 4 could do, but then did even more.
Now you may be asking yourself, what game was that? Well, my friends, that game was Saints Row 2.
Saints Row 2 stands out in the franchise as a seminal Xbox 360 open world game, and arguably one of the best sequels ever made. It took the open world crime pulp Saints Row 1 introduced and improved it in every aspect, blending sandbox gameplay structure with an ensemble story, all while forming its own identity as a franchise. The game starts out with you waking up in a prison hospital 5 years after blowing up the central antagonist's yacht in the first game. Your cellmate, Carlos, explains that the 3rd Street Saints have been disbanded. From here, the protagonist gets back on their feet and sets up the new gang HQ with the help of friend and former gang member Johnny Gat, along with lieutenants Shandy, Carlos, and Pierce. The Saints get to work taking back Stillwater from the 3 main gangs known as the Rodin, the Brotherhood, and the Sons of Samedi. Each branch of the story offers a unique perspective on what Stillwater means to the gang vying for control of it. The Ronin are a Yakuza-like biker gang. They control the casinos and the porn. Their story is filled with themes of honor and betrayal, and feature quite a bit of cinematography and cutscenes that reads like an old-school samurai film. The Sons of Samedi are a Haitian cartel that deal in the drug trade.
Smoking a fat one. Big doinks.
And finally, the Brotherhood is a tribal gang that deals in the gun trade. It's not just a story being there for the sake of having missions to do, it also manages to pull off some very emotional moments, such as the funeral of Gat's wife, Aisha. The story reminds me of Yakuza in that way. It can be as absurd, heartbreaking, comedic, or gut-wrenching as it needs to be. The writers do a great job of balancing gameplay and story. After a chaotic gameplay session, you're brought back down to earth watching the plot unfold and connecting with the characters around you. For how goofy the gameplay and mission design is, the story is sneakily one of the best things going for Saints Row 2. You're never working for anyone else but yourself. Your whole objective is you're the leader of the Saints, and you need to take back Stillwater piece by piece. It's a revenge story of the highest caliber. A personal story in which you aren't just proving yourself to the boss giving quests to you. You're proving to Stillwater, to the rival gangs, and the gang you built up yourself, that you're back and you're more badass than you ever were. The ensemble cast of characters are why the story is so special. Every character in the game has their own unique backstory and motivations, and have something of value to add to the story. Your lieutenants feel like family, and are characters you actually want to be around and see grow, rather than just being NPC quest givers. Pierce, the lieutenant in charge of the Ronin, always comes off as flustered and overthinks every plan he's devised. This contrasts with the boss' nonchalant, guns-a-blazing approach to everything, and makes for some pretty funny moments throughout the story. Carlos is more of a rookie schemer. He's young and inexperienced, but he's got heart and he's willing to do anything to prove himself. Shandy, on the surface, is just a stoner girl, but inside she's highly intelligent on the underground world, walking the boss through every aspect of the Stillwater drug trade. And of course, you can't forget about the OG Johnny Gat. Gat's personality reflects the bosses a lot, relishing things like charging in head-on and causing as much chaos as possible. The game takes time to make you care about the characters surrounding you. Your relationship with them continues to build throughout the entire game, so when it comes time to rescue them, you're incentivized to do so. The game isn't just telling me these people are my friends, go fight for them. They feel like real, legitimized characters that I actually want to be around. We can't discuss the story and the characters without discussing, you. Well, not you, but you.
What the fuck is you talking about?
See, the protagonist in Saints Row 2 is demonstrably you. You create them how you want, you give them a voice, and you dress them up to your liking. But the boss, as a character, has their own personality. The boss is effectively a sadistic psychopath that relishes in destruction and prefers to charge in head-on to whatever that needs to get done, with a deep unconditional loyalty to the people around them. Since there's no dialogue options or player choice involved in the story, it technically isn't you. Or is it? What? See, what if I told you the boss's personality reflects the way you desire to interact with the game itself? There's a certain level of meta in the way the boss is written. The most fun you're having in the game usually involves calling your homies and blowing stuff up together. There's no shortage of fun just running around Stillwater causing complete and utter mayhem. Rather than make a silent protagonist like they did in the last Saints Row, they wrote a protagonist whose biggest traits are the things you want to do in the open world anyway. It's honestly kind of genius if you think about it. It quickly dissipates ludonarrative dissonance because it's something the boss loves to do. Speaking of being in the open world, the game incentivizes you to go out and have fun to build up respect and progress in the story. Since anything you do in the game nets you respect, everything turns into a minigame.
Going so fucking fast! Hell, what?
By the time you're done goofing off in the world, hours have gone by and you'll build up more than enough respect without even realizing it. When not playing story missions, the bulk of your time will most likely be spent on doing activities. Activities like insurance fraud or mayhem are great because they rely on your ability to use the sandbox to complete objectives. In insurance fraud, your whole objective is to take damage by any means necessary. However you do it is completely up to you and the way you choose to mess around in the open world. In mayhem, you're tasked with causing as much property damage as possible with the weapons at your disposal. Activities like Hitman require you to think outside the box and find your targets to take them out. It's pure and simple fun, but most of all, it emphasizes freedom. That's what Saints Row 2 does best. Makes you feel truly free to do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. When you just feel like roaming around Stillwater, you'll discover the uniqueness of the world and how dense the environment is. Stillwater, it has quite a diverse landscape, with every district having its own theme and unique NPC types. On the low end side of town, you'll find a lot of liquor stores and
I'm in New York
bums.
City just hanging out.
Whereas in the business district, you'll find jewelry stores and sports cars driving around. What sells the world is the unmarked enterable buildings, such as the police station or the Saints Row Church. There's even a secret mall that you can enter with 3 unique clothing stores.
The mighty sun.
The bizarre nature of the game is coursing through the blood of Stillwater. There's no shortage of ugly NPCs with the wackiest lines of dialogue you can think of. It takes the idea of parodying the US that GTA introduced and takes it to a whole nother level. Saints Row 2 gets a lot of things right, but we can't discuss the game without addressing the elephant in the room, and that's the inherent competition it has with Grand Theft Auto. Since Saints Row's inception, it has always been looked at as a GTA clone, and this sentiment isn't without merit. The open world, crime, do whatever you want nature of the game is undoubtedly influenced by GTA, but 2 innovated the idea of being in a gang. It built off of concepts of player freedom that prior open world games started. We're about to get into some deep analysis here, boys, so just go ahead and strap in, alright? Saints Row 2 and GTA 4 were released only 6 months apart from each other, and with both of these games looking so similar on the outside, they were undoubtedly going to be compared. The label of GTA clone is one of the worst things you can have attached to your game. It instantly shuts people off to the idea that your game is going to be any good. But even with all that Saints Row 2 had going against it, it still managed to carve its own lane in the industry. Volition knew what they were up against, and they leaned into it with a Genesis does what Nintendo don't style commercials, such as this one.
Would you rather go bowling or steal a septic truck and spray loads of sewage on pedestrians?
But to understand how Saints Row 2 found success in setting itself apart from GTA 4, we need to go back to the ancient time of 2004. The PS2 was nearing the end of its life cycle, and a little known game known as GTA San Andreas was released. San Andreas was a groundbreaking game to say the least. It took what GTA 3 and Vice City did with its open world and introduced deep customization and life sim elements such as a full wardrobe customization and weight management. People loved it, and still to this day, San Andreas is considered the best GTA game. Now fast forward to April 2008. GTA 4 is released worldwide and shatters sales records, netting 6 million copies sold in the first week. Not only was it a commercial hit, but it was also critically acclaimed and a landmark moment in gaming history. It showcased how much of a leap in tech there was from the 6th gen to the 7th, showcasing huge advances in physics and graphical fidelity. Not only that, but it proved to the general public that video games can have sophisticated, highly intelligent narratives. But for how great of a game GTA 4 is, there's no denying the open world gameplay was scaled back immensely from what we saw in San Andreas in favor of story and technical advancement. Car customization became non-existent, wardrobes were heavily limited, no haircuts, tattoos, or weight management, and our weapon choices were cut in half. For a lot of GTA fans, it was looked at as a sort of a disappointment. Fast forward 6 months later, Saints Row 2 was released. While GTA 4 was scaling back in scope, Volition went full throttle into making Saints Row 2 the biggest game they could possibly make. It evolved the idea San Andreas introduced of deep customization for just about anything that you can interact with in the open world. From the wardrobe to the body shop, everything about customization was taken to the nth degree. And for fans that were disappointed that GTA left behind these mechanics, they felt they had a new home in Saints Row 2. In conjunction with the freedom of the open world, Saints Row 2 also had a starkly different tone when it came to the story. GTA 4 is an emotional story about an immigrant trying to navigate their life through a seemingly unnavigable era of the United States. Saints Row 2 is about conquering a fictional city in the most fun way you can conjure up. Saints Row 2 encourages you to go out and cause chaos because your protagonist loves it just as much as you do. But But in GTA 4, Nico is inherently a good-natured person, so going on a rampage with him just doesn't make any sense, nor does it feel right. Saints Row 2 focuses on making every moment of gameplay a fun factor. GTA 4 is more methodical in its approach to open world storytelling, and is more focused on making you digest the story you're taking in. So for how similar GTA 4 and Saints Row 2 may seem, they couldn't be more diametrically opposed in every aspect. For whatever your definition of a GTA clone is, there's one thing for certain. Saints Row 2 has proven that it's more than that. Volition looked at Rockstar dead in the face and told them, "I can do everything you can't," and became the competition, rather than a copycat. But, as we can see in hindsight, this approach didn't exactly work in Saints Row's favor in the long run.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
So why did Saints Row fail as a franchise? We already established that 2 was a great game, there's not really any bad entries in the franchise, so what went wrong? Well, it all starts back at the launch of Saints Row 2 itself. No matter how much Volition tried to distance the release date of Saints Row 2 from GTA 4, the effort was futile. The comparisons are endless, and non-Saints Row fans will always see it as a little brother to GTA. GTA 4 sold 6 million copies in the first week, the fastest selling video game of all time at that point. Saints Row 2 sold just over 100,000 copies. To this day, GTA 4 has over 28 million copies sold, while Saints Row 2 just has under 4 million copies sold. But sales data isn't the end-all be-all. There's more than enough space in the industry for both of these franchises to exist. Well, it also turns out that every Saints Row entry seems to have an extremely unlucky release schedule. Saints Row 3 released on November 15th, 2011. You know what other game released in that same week? Fucking Skyrim. Saints Row 3 was by no means a commercial failure, but the absolute domination Skyrim had on the industry was too much, even for the most popular AAA titles. Furthermore, the franchise started to slump into an identity crisis. Saints Row 2, for as wacky as it was still rooted in a quaint story about warring gang factions. Saints Row 3 struggles to decide whether it wants to continue this archetype, or ditch it for a complete chaos where anything, like an entire zombie island, is possible. Saints Row 4 goes for the latter choice, and literally makes you the President of the United States battling aliens. Oh, did I mention you have superpowers as well? This pivot towards narrative lunacy left a bad taste in a lot of OG Saints Row fans' mouths. By the time 4 had come out, the franchise shed any comparisons it got to Grand Theft Auto, but at the cost of its core identity. And with the reboot being a complete and utter failure, it looks like the glory days of Saints Row are over. But even so, we can still look back at the good old days of Saints Row. Saints Row 2 managed to cultivate a cult following, not because it tried to make a copy of GTA, but because of the heart and soul Volition put into every aspect of the game. Saints Row 2 managed to do what so many open-world crime games failed to do: shake the title of GTA clone, and create something just as endearing now as it was back in 2008. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.